Welcome to Nameless Debate Radio, where radioactivity is contagious. You can join us in broadening our minds on the Nameless Debates Discord via the link below, and even feature here yourself, if you've got what it takes.
Hold on one second. Hold on. I heard that. I was like, hold on,
No.
Cross. Let's talk about this real quick.
Yeah, Cross.
Oh.
I want to hear this real quick.
Wait, what?
Why don't? Go ahead.
Nah, you good, bro.
Why don't you think that he should be platinum?
No, I didn't say that. I didn't say that. Damn.
You said, "Whoa, why is Jordy platinum?" That's what you said.
Because I've never seen you debate before, bro. I've never seen you debate before.
Well, you should probably see me debate then. Sound like I'm hiding from debate.
I mean, I could test my veganism thing on you if you want, but
Test your what on me?
like my Isaac's kryptonite. Try to formulate a ethical argument that breaks down and demoralizes Isaac because he's wrong.
What is Isaac wrong about?
He's basing his morality off of sentience, which is really dumb.
I don't think he necessarily bases morality off of sentience. He's saying that specifically, right? Is that if you don't value sentience as the fundamental trait, right, then you could lead to a lot of principled absurdities, right? So it's not like I just only care about sentience. There's a whole reason, right?
I mean, no, but I would say reason itself, sapience. We're going to go towards trying to find the least amount of contradictions within any moral framework, right? In regards to the difference between humans and non-human.
Contradictions
creatures.
have nothing to do with what trait you value. It's contradictions only if you value the trait on a consistent basis, right?
Well, I'm talking about just effectively. When he goes as far as to say name the trait that differentiates a human from an animal, right? And then tries to flip the coin and say, okay, so if a human is not or does not have this trait, then would it be okay to kill them, right? You're really just trying to find out what is the thing that gives us or allows us to logically be consistent with our practice of whatever ethical that we're doing.
No, you can be logically consistent and accept sapiens as a trait. You can be logically consistent and accept having ears as a trait. It's irrelevant to the contradictory nature, right? The contradiction only arises if you say something that's P and not P. I accept killing humans and I accept not killing animals, right?
Oh
But
my
not
God.
spelling
No,
out
dude,
anything to differentiate them.
Of course I know what the contradiction is, but I am saying that even if someone is logically consistent, right, you would go, oh, it's wrong, that's really bad. So obviously I'm trying.
No,
Well,
wait.
Yes,
If
totally,
someone,
dude. I've been in your server. What are you talking about?
Well, first of all, nobody, at least Isaac hasn't said this. You can maybe bring up someone who doesn't know what they're talking about, but I've never heard Isaac say that you're wrong. Other than pointing out a contradiction. Never him saying that if you're consistent, you're wrong. He's never said that. And if you pull up a video where he says that, please show me.
Fair enough.
Yeah, you shouldn't make assertions, right, without evidence.
Well, no, it's more like I only get to listen to and talk to Isaac for a very limited amount of time, and a lot of what I base my opinion on comes from words out of his mouth as well as words.
And he's never
from
said those
people-
words though.
Well, but the other people who have, right, who are a part of the server who follow him.
We're talking about Isaac, nigga. What are you talking about?
Oh,
We're talking about Isaac.
Y'all represent. Y'all a collective, man. Y'all all under his flag.
No, that's not how it works. But
yeah,
but hold on. Spider actually wants to
What?
talk to you.
Oh, dude.
Speaking of stuff. So Spider, you can go ahead.
Go ahead with what?
Oh, I thought you had a question regarding like veganism.
What? No, I don't have any questions.
Okay, sure. Never mind that.
Yeah. When you might probably be hinting to the fact that he says that like most people, if the logical extension, right, of most people's moral systems or normative systems, like would entail veganism. And if you're saying that, like, if like for example, if I said something like infinite holocaust or some shit is okay, like most people find that absurd. I don't think he's necessarily saying that's a wrong stance or anything. That might be the confusing thing.
But he would say that it's absurd.
But the way he says it, he's not defining absurdity in the context of right and wrong, right? It's not necessarily
but right and wrong, right, don't always have to be moral indicators. So like he may even disagree with that morally, right? So in a sense, to his objective moral framework, it would technically be wrong, but even then we don't have to go that route, because like right and wrong can still be
his objective moral framework. What do you mean by that? He doesn't have an objective moral framework.
I didn't say objective, I said subjective. To his objective moral framework. Okay. And even to take a step further, my whole thing is that like there is a technical way to bring that up, right? But I don't even want to do it, because right and wrong are not necessarily always indicators. If you get the right answer on a math problem, right, not like there's no moral thing there, it's just you're correct. That's a very logical thing. It doesn't actually have to entail irrationality.
Wait, well, you can have right or wrong in the context of like mathematics. That's different from like the realm of normative ethics. Like, unless you believe, I mean, assuming your meta-ethical position is that it's subjective, right? There's no, like, I don't know, I don't understand what you're really going about, but the idea is that basically to win a moral discussion, from a logical standpoint, would either to show a contradiction in someone's system. That's as far as that goes. Like that's really it. I don't really know what else you're trying to.
No, I mean, like if you say that something is absurd, right? Like if I go, it's okay to have like an incel holocaust, and I give my reasons out, right? If you reject the premise and you believe that the premise is absurd, to you it would be wrong. And I think there's like an issue with saying that it would be wrong.
No, not necessarily, right? So, all right, so there's this thing called reductio absurdum, right? And there's this, I can just like, there's this absurdity, right? So like, I don't know if you're confusing, right? So like contradiction, for example, right? Like the reason why contradictions are considered false is because of the reductio ad absurdum, right? Because if you use the deductive explosion principle, it leads to a lot of like really crazy shit, right? And you can look it up if you like. I'm not really sure what it is. If I don't think he's using absurdity in like a deep sense when he says like, "Oh, you're absurd, so you're wrong." He's just saying that most people would find that absurd. I mean, I don't really like going in that route, anyways. But I'm just being fair to him, trying to steel man what he says, right?
Well, even there, right? Like you're steel manning what he's saying. So I think that even if you took his words, right, it's not an unfair thing to assume, based off of the way that he presents himself, that another way to say, like when he says that something would be absurd, or that most people would find this thing to be absurd, if another way to say that is most people would think that you're wrong on this, I don't think like in conversation those two things are like unrelated or just like have nothing to do with one another. I actually think it's an acceptable thing to make, not necessarily an equivocation, but just to interchange these two terms within conversation, which essentially that's what you're disagreeing with. And it's like, well, no, dude, you know what I mean when I say what I say. At least I believe you do.
I mean, I think you should have a goal of steel manning someone's position.
No, of course. I think anyone should want to steel man, period, right? But I am pointing out that you're steel manning, because you just said that. And when you're steel manning, that is like implying that he's not doing the best job in presenting himself.
No, that's not an implication at all. That's when you
Totally
steel man.
is. That's what a
No,
steel
no.
man is.
Listen. When you're steel manning somebody, you're making an effort, regardless of them being ambiguous or not, to just understand their argument fully. It has nothing to do with them explaining it in a bad way. You can steel man somebody who's saying their point in a non-ambiguous way. You're just steel manning it so you can just fully understand it. Like, do you think that the lack of
No,
comprehension?
no, wait,
Listen,
hold on.
let me finish.
My
Do you
bad.
think the lack of comprehension of every argument is on the person who's giving it? Right? Can you have someone who gives an unambiguous argument, but still the other person has trouble comprehending it fully? I mean, it's possible, right?
Honestly, yes, there are times when that
All right.
happens.
So
And I wait and
therefore,
hold on.
wait, let me finish. So therefore, you can have instances where someone can be clear on their words, and you can steel man them.
But my point, which is what I've been trying to get at, is that if you're not effectively communicating your stance, then it doesn't matter how clear you've been because you haven't been clear to the person that you're presenting your stance to.
But you just agreed that you can be clear, and the other person still just not comprehend what you're saying.
Well, effectively, right? You
Yeah.
can clear with what you're saying technically, and people still not understand. Now, which do you value more? The clarity of your speech or you transmitting the ideas to the other person?
No, what I value is the other person comprehending my argument fully, right? And so, in order to do that, I would want the other person to steel man my position, so they have a complete knowledge of like what I'm trying to say. Like that is what I value.
I If you're talking about rephrasing, maybe I have an incorrect understanding of the term steelman. Because to me, if I steelman your argument, right? It's not just me rephrasing your stance. It is me trying to give more clarity to your stance in a particular type of way.
No, not necessarily. A steel man is articulating someone's position in the direct manner that they have their position. You're trying to, in essence, give their argument in the way that they intend to have it. So it's not necessarily about rephrasing or about like clarity, right? I mean, you're trying to clarify what they're saying, sure, but like the idea is not to clarify them. Like it's again, you're making it embedded that it's somehow on the fault of the person that they're lacking some type of like articulation about it. Like it's not always that. You're just steel manning somebody just to make sure you understand fully their argument. It's you kind of.
I thought a steel man kind of indicated that you were strengthening their argument.
No, not necessarily. Because like, I mean,
Right.
you're just saying their argument the way that they want it. I mean, you adding anything wouldn't technically be steel manning anymore. It would be just a different argument.
Let me check the dictionary.
Uh-huh.
Actually, I don't even know if steel man would appear in the dictionary. It appears in Urban Dictionary. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what source of authority to go to. Yeah, Urban Dictionary. They say representing an argument as strongly as possible. That's Urban Dictionary.
I mean, that's roughly what it is, right? So it's like representing an argument, right? And well, I don't know.
Sure. I guess that's right. I guess they kind of reduce to each other.
Yeah, it's a weird phrasing, but like that, I guess that'll work.
Whose argument are we steel manning?
No, Cross had an issue with like Isaac's, one of Isaac's arguments related to NTT or something, and he was like, he's not clear about his words and shit like that.
I think NameTheTrait's pretty dumb, to be honest. I don't know. I don't know, dude.
I mean, I don't think it's necessarily an argument for veganism. I don't think it's a dumb argument. Now,
I think applied to anything, it's always going to reduce to like either an appeal to popularity or an appeal to someone's emotions over their internal logic.
Yeah, well, I think for the most part, like it at least it makes you think about your normative system in a way that's consistent, and most people seem to have if they're honest, right, that they'll kind of accept certain vegan like ideologies, but like if you can attack name the trait in certain ways, like I, for example, like I have kind of an argument against it, even though I don't really like talk about it much, you know. But but it's still a good argument, I think. It's just not necessarily an argument that leads to veganism all the time, you know. It's not like one of those.
Well, I mean, it can be applied to anything, but I think in general, like you're presenting someone with a a consistent position which would have them taking an action which they find uncomfortable. But rather than saying, hey, like, why are you uncomfortable? You literally can't point to anything which would like make this wrong for you. You say, no, you should actually abandon your system and cater to like this preference you have that you can't really root in anything.
Yeah, so I think that's actually a pretty important point. But actually, like, so I've kind of thought about this a little bit and like it extends kind of farther than that. So if you accept like meta-ethically like some position of like emotivism, where like all my moral statements are just descriptive facts of emotion, well,
right,
then normative principles in general, right, just don't exist, right? They're just merely like illusionary, when really we just work off of our emotional urges.
Yeah,
So
but like even if you subscribe to emotivism, I think you could make the case that like, arguably we have like our preference for something like logical consistency is probably going to outweigh almost all else, right?
well, the thing about emotivism is that it's only saying like normative statements or like expressions of emotion. So you can say like there's
but the statement of like we should argue in accordance with the laws of logic, like this is still a normative statement.
I think, yeah, sure, you can say that we ought to follow the laws of logic, but I think people don't necessarily. But I think the idea of principles, right, that you can hold a principle view, is illusionary. Like principles don't exist if emotivism is true, because if emotivism is true, that means that we just work off of our desires. There's no contradiction there because there's no principle to contradict. You see what I'm saying?
I see what you're saying, but I mean, at the risk of being like a little reductive, I feel like you could argue that we should have principles simply because we prefer to have them.
Well, you can say that we should have principles, and that's fine to make that claim. But the idea that they actually like have an ontological value is really what I'm getting at here.
Oh yeah, of course, yeah, they would. Yeah.
So if you were to give an argument, you could say something like, well, if emotivism is true and principles are merely an illusion, in just how they exist, then therefore it would be more accurate of describing like human moral behavior would just be talking like given the certain subject, if they were in this position, what they would do, right? So like I'm a person who's like fucking like I was born in America, I have these certain moral intuitions. Well, given the fact to kill a human, I wouldn't, right? Given the fact to kill an animal, I would. There's not really a contradiction there, right? Because there's no principle. It's just you're just describing what would happen in those instances.
Yeah, this is like Angstreik's position, right?
Actually, I don't know. I don't really know much about.
Is it situationism? I forgot what it was.
I know he's a particularist.
Particularism. Yeah.
Yeah, he's a but I don't know if that's his meta-ethical stance or his normative stance, because you can have normative stance that says I ought to follow my desires ought to be good, and you could have a meta-ethical position, which is that people act in their particulars as the nature of like moral behavior.
Right.
Yeah, it's all weird. But but I'd still have to work on my specific objection to it. But it's still fun. Like I still think NameTheTrait's it's a pretty strong normative argument for most people. And then you obviously have a lot of people who, and sure, there's some people who could have different, like they could have just different beliefs there. But you would have to accept some really wild shit. Now, if someone does accept some wild shit, I'm not the person to doing the appeal to popularity or anything like that. Like I simply just say, okay,
Yeah.
well,
That's one of my main issues with the Ask Yourself server is that for the short time I was there, it seemed like every time someone was presented with this argument, they just bit the bullet and then the argument ended. But there was no attempt to demonstrate like, hey, maybe you would be happier or better off if you didn't bite this bullet, or like maybe there are like underlying reasons we can both agree on that would then lead you to not bite the, like the argument just ended because it was like, well, that's absurd. It's like, okay, you could have just said this at the start of the conversation.
So I think what goes there is the two types of discourse, right? So you can have like a logical discourse and you have like an emotional discourse. I think when it comes to a logical discourse, you're going to have people just for the sake of not wanting to be contradictory or not wanting to like appear like they're losing, they'll just accept wild shit. And then I think at that point you should resort to like an emotional discourse and say like, hey, look at fucking slaughterhouse shit, or something else that might be like emotionally triggering that could maybe sway their, particulars.
Well, it's not that I have an issue with switching to emotional discourse. The problem I often saw was that the conversation essentially would just end entirely because there would be a consensus among everyone else there that the argument had been won, because to them they had brought the person to something which they considered absurd, but their position to begin with was absurd to them. So like I don't understand why you would go ring around the rosy when you could have just said like, well, that's crazy, and then I don't know, kicked him from the server.
The appeal to absurdity is, I just feel like, is really stupid because, like, you could just think of any situation. Like, if we were in Nazi Germany, right, and I said that Jews deserve equal rights akin to Germans, right, I would be seen as absurd to the fucking popularity, right? I mean, to the populate to the general person, I would be you can just appeal to popularity and say like I'm wrong. My position is absurd. Like it's like the appeal to popularity is really bad. If like I've seen people use it before, trust me, and I've gotten very frustrated. But that is to say, though, I mean, to be fair, though, it's like a lot of people on the server aren't pretty like philosophically literate. They're not really like they don't really understand what they're doing. So like I don't really.
Yeah, that's probably true. Actually, no, that's definitely true. I complain to Achilles about it all the time. So
it's pretty bad. It's pretty bad. I didn't even know. When did you join the server?
Me? I joined shortly after I got banned from Ask Yourself.
Oh, who banned you?
I don't know what that was. When was that, Achilles?
Like 4 months ago? 3?
Yeah.
Oh, you got banned by Isaac?
Yeah. I actually don't know why.
You've banned a lot of people, bro. So I can't even tell you.
Yeah.
I thought Cross was there too, but I guess I don't know he got banned or left or something.
No, I'm still there. I just like don't really have an interest in like talking to almost anybody on that server, so I don't really say anything. I don't like. I guess my thing is whenever I get on that server, most people end up trying to call me an asshole or say that I'm stupid or like some other type of
I mean,
disapproving
I
insult.
wouldn't. I'm not the one to call you stupid or anything, but like, at least from the shit that I've seen, you've said some pretty wild shit.
No, definitely. I've definitely been like on the deep end on a lot of the shit that I've said. But my thing is, I will actually point out when these people not only say stupid things, but are just also being emotional or also being irrational or also just like purely being an asshole. And then they get mad at me for it. And so they start like, being emotional and like saying, you're dumb, you're dumb, you're dumb, you're dumb. And it's like, well, you guys are being dumb too. You're being just as much of an asshole, if not more. So either you care about being an asshole or you're just trying to like show hate to someone. I don't know what it is. And that annoys me to no end. Because when anybody goes as far as to do that, then it's just like, oh, so you don't really have like any grounds to stand on any of the things that you're doing. You're just being a dick. And that's not to you, because I I actually do like you, Jordy. Like I've seen you around, right? I just haven't seen you in debate, which is the reason why I questioned if you were plat or not, or like why you were plat, because I've never seen you like actually debate before. Like I've seen you educate, but I haven't seen you like force someone to consider or just like have that high level conversation that you seem capable of having.
I mean, I feel you. I mean, I've debated. I mean, I don't debate like all the time, but I've in debates I've had. I mean, I'm not the person to go seek out debate like all the time. I mean, if someone wants to debate me, like I'll do it. I've done it in like Seth's server. I've done it in Isaac's server, of course. But the main thing I like doing is learning this shit, more than like trying to like win against everybody. But in terms of the debates I've had, like I've had some pretty like high level debates. I mean, I think the one I had with Destiny, but it was really short. But that one is on Seth's second channel. If you want to see that,
Yeah, you crushed in that debate.
appreciate it, bro.
No problem.
I mean, I don't know. I still need like help with my stuff. More like just need to practice more, just formulating precise, clear lines of reasoning.
You said you need to practice what now?
Like, just making clear lines of reasoning. Like, I'm not the dude who has a premise, starts the premise, and then follows to a particular conclusion. I'm the dude who hears your premise, sees your line of reasoning, goes, these two things are tangential or it doesn't really make much sense, and points out that you need to like be a bit more clearer or more precise what you're saying. Like that's usually me. It's really weird. I'm more a critic than an actual like debater. It's kind of said. I need to work on it.
Well, yeah, I mean, adopting that type of position is number one really defensive, because it's like, you just kind of combating what the other person's saying. You're not really making an offense, right? Second thing is like that type of debating, you're not really, it's hard for you to really have incentive to learn anything like deep, right? Because if all you can do is just resist what the average layman can say, it's like, well, how much do you really need to know? Like, it's not hard for me to resist most people on terms of some basic shit,
Well, a lot of the stuff for me when I'm debating something, it's not necessarily about me trying to like subjugate them into my idea. A lot of it is I'm trying to understand their framework and how they talk, then adopt their like vernacular in order to like guide them to a conclusion that I think would be right. Though, like even when it comes off as confrontational, a lot of the time when we try to have a serious discussion with someone, like I try to get to the bottom line, to the truth of stuff, and then they end up not wanting to accept truth that they logically are saying, and it just it doesn't really work most of the time. So I just
well, the thing about debates is that, I mean, clearly there's always an emotional interest, right? That prevents someone from accepting what is perceived to be true, right? I mean, I've had debates, like all the debates in Set Server pretty much have turned into like fucking like insults and shit, like me just calling them fucking stupid or like retarded or like them just really getting mad. And it's not because I don't like them personally, it's because like they just refuse to have clarity because of this like emotional interest. So you're not gonna always have that. I don't think there's even debates that exist now that you can truly have like a good just a really good convergence to the truth. It's usually like, if you want to do that, you should probably more have discussions and shit.
I mean, I don't know. When it comes to like the public, you're typically right. Like the people that I found, right? Like even when we have arguments, it's like outside of Discord or the public, like it's a pretty normal thing. It's like sometimes one person is right, sometimes another person is wrong, and it's like having as much humility to just accept that, which I still, strive to continue working on all the time. So I just want to be able to understand people more so that I can understand where they're coming from. So when they say that I'm like either being unclear or wrong or incorrect on something, I can understand what they mean when they say, and then I could either like agree with their premise or not, and then I could like work from there. But I need to understand what they mean first.
Yeah. I mean, you should always work to steel man someone's position for sure.
But it's also like, so like when it comes into any type of like discourse, debate, discussion, otherwise, right? I feel like it's another form of communication, and like communication is a thing. You can tell a story with just like angles of a camera. You can do it with like lines on a page with how you shade in different characters, right? And then like an anime or something, like communication goes a long way. But when you're talking about dialectics, I think there's onus on both people for the communication to be effective. The onus is on the person who's talking, right, to be as clear as possible. And the onus is also on the person who's listening to be able to understand what they're saying enough to get what they mean. And whenever, sorry.
No, you go ahead. You can continue.
Well, it's like whenever, someone is trying to understand you being a general thing, and like even when they're trying to understand you and you're being clear to you but you're not being clear to them, I feel as if the onus is on you to try to be even clearer, whether that's using like a completely different like vocabulary, whether it's dumbing it down, whatever. Like if I'm legitimately trying to understand you and I still cannot, I do think the onus is on you to be more clear. And I do think you weren't being clear enough, otherwise I'd be able to understand you. I just think those are laws of effective communication.
Well, perhaps let me give you this example, right? So you have somebody who has a very verbose like language, right? They're just really well articulation, and they have like a lot of really, really like high level words in their vocabulary. Okay. And they have a certain conceptual nature of like what they're trying to say, right? I mean, those are in essence ideas, right? Just a conceptual thing, and then the words to kind of give it its description. So you can have somebody who just fundamentally, in the context of how they think, just have a different conceptual nature, and then how they speak just have a different articulation, right? And they can be clear within their subjective limits of language and their subjective framework of conception, and still not have another person understand it. So it's the clarity you can blame on the person who's talking, but sometimes it's really not the fault really of either one. There's sometimes it's just a really subjective thing that kind of can't converge sometimes. Like if I went to a fucking 9-year-old or a 12-year-old and explained them scientific epistemology or some shit, and I explained it as dumbed down as possible, I mean, I don't really expect with a high probability for them to really understand what I'm saying, even if I dumb it down to the most basic of the basic words, or conceptually to like the most basic of analogies, right?
I mean, it depends. Like when you say, like in the example that she just gave, if you go scientific epistemology, right? If you're going to try to talk to a fourth grader about scientific epistemology, like even if you don't use those words, if there's like a name for it, right? You're trying to like describe it in these ways, they're probably not going to get it. You're right. But if you take it maybe more from the inside, right? So if you go like, maybe you ask a question like, how do we know that things exist? And then they go, well, we can see it, right? And then you just like play both with them so they could follow you with the line of reasoning for how we come to scientific epistemology. Then that may give them understanding just like of the core practice and philosophy behind scientific epistemology. Like I think there is a way to be able to effectively communicate that idea even if they don't get it.
The specific example you gave wouldn't lead to scientific epistemology, but I think I understand what you're trying to say. But the problem is that I don't think it's really that possible. I mean, and even if you talk about like Piaget's cognitive development, right? At certain levels, like at certain developmental levels, you want to be able to understand high level abstraction. So even then, you have like a biological obstacle that just can't be overcome, right?
Are you talking about if kids can know like big words? Because they do.
No, I'm talking about if kids can know high concepts, right? Abstractions. So like certain kids, right? So if you look at Piaget's developmental ladder, right? At lower ends, right? Like if you pick a kid that's like in the middle stage, I've really forgot the technical terms. If you tried to relate to them, like if I tried to explain them like the laws of logic or something, or like some formal logic shit, like their abstraction hasn't developed yet psychologically, so they would have no idea what I'm talking about. Or like high level moral reasoning, something like Kant's categorical imperatives. If I tried to explain to them like how that came in formulation, they wouldn't understand it. Just like biologically, and it's just like empirically shown that they won't understand it. So there is sometimes, again, like biological or cultural or socioeconomical obstacles.
I mean, if you have the like stats, that support that, then I see where you're coming from. Even if you don't, I still see where you're coming from. But if you don't use the words categorical imperative and you just dictate what the categorical imperative is in simple terms, I think a kid's gonna understand it.
Okay, well then we could do it for you right now. All right, so you know what a categorical imperative, right? Is right?
Not Kant specifically, no.
Okay, well, a categorical imperative, right, is just a rule or a norm developed from Kant's universality principle, right? So the basic idea is that if this rule were the case and society led to like this chaotic nature, then we should therefore create a maxim, and that rule should be precedent, right? So let's take, for example, murder. If everyone murdered each other, right, society would lead to just super unfavorable outcome. I mean, just complete chaos, right? So then you create a rule and says that, well, murder should be wrong, and it should be because of the action itself. Now, explaining that to a 5-year-old, like a 6, 7-year-old, right? I mean, that is just, again, fundamentally pretty hard to do, right? Because then it's like, well, could they understand, like if you if everyone did this, what it would lead to necessarily, or like, could they understand that certain rules are as bad, or like shit like that. Like, it's just, I don't think that it's like some things can be explained like that. If it could, I think that we would start these like abstraction type subjects way earlier. Like, do you think that most kids could understand calculus if you just broke it down some simple shit? Because I don't think so. I think that's why we wait until at least, right, we're talking about like ages of like 13, 14.
I mean, I don't think that always has to be the case, and I think that there's evidence within history that shows that the more advanced we get, the younger we start teaching our kids these higher levels of math. Like algebra wasn't,
But
a thing
still, that
we.
doesn't actually point to the exact age, right? All you're saying is that, well, as IQ increases fundamentally, then the age that we can teach abstract concepts is lower, right? I mean, sure, but the idea is that, well, does that mean that kids at some type of age, let's pick 4, can understand like the laws of thermodynamics, or can understand the Copenhagen interpretation of quantum mechanics?
I
It's like,
mean,
it's
we
not
have
happening.
savant syndromes all the time. We have virtuosos in these things. I understand they're outliers, right?
Wait,
And I
wait,
know
wait,
that.
wait. Yeah, you can't, but you can't use outliers in the data set to
Yeah,
explain the interpretation of
I'm
data.
just talking about the possibility, though. I'm just talking about the possibility, and I think that if we follow the trend that's within history, we're probably going to get to a point 40, 50 years down the line where like first graders are already know their multiplication tables and are working on trigonometry. Like I think just I it,
The
all
only way that could happen is if we did some type of like biological like augmentation. Would to do like some type of like nanobots in our head, or we increase the brain capacity, or brain development. That'd be the only way that we could do that. If we're just talking about the context of, even if the Flynn effect, increased tenfold, if everyone got super smarter, like, this is not still, you're not. It's like, it's still kind of doesn't allude to the nature of the age that they'll be able to understand abstract concepts, right? It's not going to change the line of, I don't understand till I understand. All it does is just say, well, maybe it might be pushed younger. Now, if you're saying that theoretically it could go to 0, well, that doesn't really make any sense, right?
No, I'm not saying theoretically it's going to go to 0. What I am saying is that like the age isn't necessarily as pertinent as I think you're trying to emphasize it as. I think that there is a particular time that society dictates, what age or grade level rather a child should start learning specific things. But I
I mean, this
also
isn't the
think,
society dictation, though, right? This is like actual, like, empirical biological work or psychological
well,
work.
well, no, I mean they would use the findings from that work and that research in order to help them in dictating what a specific grade level should be. Like
Mm-hmm.
we write a newspaper in like the 3rd grade level literature, right? But we like use research as a metric to show what level of like English would the layman be able to understand. So I it's not just that we're doing this arbitrarily. I think we do like the work in order to come to like a justified opinion on this, but we still do dictate it regardless. And I think that we find in history that there's a trend that these things that you're talking about, these like higher levels of conceptualization and abstraction, they get the kids who are beginning to learn it are getting younger and younger and younger because we are progressing and evolving more and more and more. Now, like how fast it's going to be, I don't know, but I'm only pointing that out to say that I do think it is possible to transmit these higher forms of logical structure to children. And I think that evidence of this is seen when we're seeing more and more children get smarter at younger ages.
I mean, Yeah, I mean it's like I can understand your want for that to happen, but like I don't like I feel like there's just certain levels where we just know de facto it's not gonna happen. But now we can try to like make that better for sure. I'm not saying we should abandon that mission or something. I'm just saying like I can't explain to a 4 or 5 year old quantum mechanics or a 6 year old quantum mechanics. Maybe in time I could explain this to a 7 year old quantum mechanics if we somehow get there. But like certain ages, like unless you have some type of like Asperger's or something, you just probably won't be able to comprehend that stuff until you reach higher levels of development.
Uh, I mean, like, I don't even think I disagree with you technically, because I do think what you're talking about is real. But what I think I'm trying to point out, and what I'm trying to get at, is that time in like the development of a child, like when they start, being capable of making these higher forms of abstraction. I think we're seeing the general public like that switch within their head when their like neurology becomes more developed. It's starting to get younger and younger and younger. I'm not going to say like toddlers are going to be doing freaking quantum physics. I mean, maybe we become like a, super geniuses at like 2, maybe, but like I don't even. That's the possibility of that happening at least anytime soon is like nil, and that's not what I'm trying to go for. But I do think by the time, within the next century or so, or give or take, we're probably going to see 5-year-olds starting to like have a ground understanding and foundation on geometry. Like that may be something that could work, and I think that like it is possible, and the proof of its possibility is evident within humanity's history.
Wait, what do you mean evident humanist history?
Well, if you look into history of humanity, right? Like we went from just running to each other in caves to like being civilized, to us getting smarter, to us finding new discoveries, to us making new technology. And like now we're going to be building hotels on Mars because we get smarter and smarter the longer we live.
But see, that doesn't actually like address the baseline of abstract reasoning, right? It's just like, okay, yeah, we all gotten smarter, right? There is a Flynn effect, right? This IQ has increased globally as industrialization has increased, but I don't see how that addresses the Piaget statement, right? That I mean, at the level of you at 5 years old, right? I mean, below 5 years old, like you're just not gonna understand logic like that. It's just like I don't know how that is any relevance to that.
I believe what you're saying right now, right? Like I think that the 5-year-old almost definitely is not understanding logic. Like this is almost definitely the case every single time. There are outliers, which we both acknowledge, right? But like they're almost definitely going to. But I don't think that's always going to be the case. And the reason why is because like what 150 years ago, like the common person, or maybe more like 200 to 300 years ago, the common person was not reading, was not literate. Now we're starting at like ages of 2, maybe even younger than that, on speech, and having babies learn how to read and write. That's the trend.
Yeah. So, but reading and writing though is obviously like a different skill than abstract thinking, right?
Sorry, what?
Reading and writing is a different skill than like abstract thinking, right?
I mean, kind of. It's almost like language.
I mean, the ability to like understand like a sentence or have like the ability to write a sentence is different from understanding like stuff like, well, like 2x, like trying to find the equation of like 2x plus 4 equals 10. Right? Like I feel like those are two just completely different natures of knowledge.
I mean, I could give you like a TED talk right now where a math professor is talking to like their 6-year-old niece or something, and he ends up teaching them like the rules of algebra, and they start literally doing algebra.
Well, 6 years old isn't necessarily out the realm of like you can see beginning of logic and reasoning there, but even that's the case, right? I mean, yeah, sure, you could say basic algebra, right? But I mean, again, like basic algebra isn't necessarily that hard to comprehend.
To us now, but like I think basic, right? Like that's a very like relative intersubjective term. We generally recognize basic to mean a specific level, and I think like what is basic to us now probably is not going to be like, or what's advanced to us now is probably going to be basic to us, 1 or 200 years down the line. And that's because if we go 1 or 200 years ago, like the stuff that we're doing is like sci-fi. Like,
so here's why I think that's incorrect, right? So take like Euclidean geometry, right? Back in that day, obviously, like geometry was like the highest. I mean, yeah, it was the highest. I guess the highest math. I'm not really sure exactly much about that time period, but sure, it was like one of the most advanced maths out there, right? But even now, I mean, so many years later, and we still teach geometry, right? And it's at an intermediate level, like of understanding, right? I mean, you can condense information, or like you can just like have information, I guess, more accessible, but like I don't see how like the difficulty of it goes away or goes down over time. Like I don't think 100 years from now, quantum mechanics is going to be easier to understand for like a younger person or something.
Yeah, I'm not basing that off of the concept though. So I'm not talking about like the ontology of these different, logical quandaries or, just sciences. I'm talking about like the general intellect of the human species. I think the more we grow, the faster we will be able to get these particular things, and the more we're going to be able to build off of a solid foundation on these different concepts.
I mean, I think the foundations are there. I think you can probably say that we'll be able to convey it in a simpler way as we understand them more, right? That's possible, but like I said, I don't think that changes the baseline. If you want to change the baseline, that would be either through augmentation or like actual just changing the genetic code, right? If you find some way to like express more neuron development in between the stages of like 0 to like 21 years old, right? If you just increase the amount by like tenfold or something, yeah, you could have a lot more processing power in terms of these things.
I mean,
but
look, like, and I'm going completely off of like anecdotes, so say what you will, but like there are kids in like, by the time I was in middle school, or by the time I was in like elementary school, kids in middle school were doing high school work. Kids in high school were already going to college early with like early like college now programs, and like getting college credit for courses because they went to their local community college because they were capable of doing that work and they showed it. Like we're seeing more and more that the youth are getting like smarter and smarter, and it's really just a matter of if they want to put in the time and effort needed to understand these concepts. Like,
I mean, yeah, I mean, sure. I mean, I think kids. So if you mean certain concepts, sure, like certain kids can understand. But like I said, like you've said, like a 10 or a 12-year-old, explain them like categorical comparative, I would have to really simplify it, and even simplifying it, like I don't think they would understand like necessarily that like certain actions will just like self-evidently or like just a priori or just like it'll just lead to like this account, like it's just, or and then the universality principle isn't even the only way of developing the categorical comparative. This is just like a real simple explanation. So it's like there's just a lot of stuff that goes into it. Like there's a reason why there's whole books, right, to this shit. There's a reason why there's whole books to these things. Like even me, like I don't think I even understand most of or a lot of what Kant says, just simply because like the critique of pure reason, the critique of practical reason. The metaphysics of morals, which is Kant's books, right? They're like, we're talking about long ass books that it'll take people a year to read, or a year, 2 years to read. These are just fundamentally one of like the hardest books to read in history. So just understand, like, yeah, you can maybe simplify it to like a child, right? But the more you simplify something, fundamentally you're losing information on it by definition, right?
Well, kind of. So, like, what you're talking about is real, but I do think there is a difference between oversimplifying and just being concise. Like, maybe it leaves it a bit more open-ended, and so if they ask a specific question, then you can get more into certain specifics of a particular branch of a topic that you're referring to. But I do think that, like, being concise is more effective, and having that conversation with people works. And then like making, like, say, oh well, this is this, like, if you want to get into epistemology, right, we can just say epistemology, and then people will say, well, what about this, and go, oh well, this is this type of epistemology, so this is scientific epistemology, this is normative epistemology, this is whatever else, right? And you can understand that like there is a broad topic with a particular umbrella term, and that there are a lot of other different routes of understanding within this one umbrella term. And I think that being concise in the way that we're like referring to is effective and should be happening. Oversimplifying is not something that I encourage, but if you're rambling to me for like a minute about a categorical imperative, like, it doesn't matter if I'm a child or not. I'm probably not going to want to understand you because you're rambling.
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
I don't know. It's just my view. We seem to still disagree, right? So like, even then, that's fine. But like, I think if we give like kids a chance, like, and we try the most that we can in order to like further our understanding to the point where we can teach them in a like really effective, simple way, I think that will help us even more understand what we're talking about as we're teaching it to them. Like, tutoring is actually a really good way to check your understanding of a subject. And I think if we want to like further increase our communication skills, just like on an individual basis and just as well as like on a collective basis, we should be putting the onus on us to be as clear as possible. Even if we are being clear already. Even if we are being clear already, like if they're still not getting it, I think if we challenge ourselves to be even more clear to the point where they can get it, like, and not like oversimplifying, but like just trying to understand where they're coming from, like, I think that would help us so much more than just saying, oh, they're never going to get it, and giving up.
I'm not saying give up. I'm just saying that you can't just explain wholly these concepts. Like, it's just, unless you simplify it to an area where you're losing information. So unless you find an acceptable trade-off of simplification versus loss of information, if you just don't care about the information you lose trying to simplify a concept, then like, sure, like, I guess I can discount the extra information, even important to like about the categorical comparative. Sure, I can do that to explain like the universality principle, but even then there's other stuff to it that just are important that you just really, it's going to be hard to explain. Because and even understand, even if you look at, we can just zoom in on the categorical comparative real quick, right? So it's like, okay, even if you use a universality principle, right? It's like, well, what does that necessarily mean when something's universal? And they gotta explain what that means, right? Or they could even ask something like, well, like are like certain things they like they don't even probably know like what morality is necessarily, right? Then you have to kind of explain that. It's like you're just giving like just oversimplified primers over and over again. Like it's just well, like I just don't see a value in that necessarily. Like, what is the point of that?
I mean, if we're talking about just like baseline morality, I think there's a huge consensus of just introducing the golden rule and asserting it as, just the moral principle that kids should understand.
But see, they don't learn that through logical apprehension. They learn it through literally like empirical like things. Like the kids, and this is like true of moral psychology. They don't learn morality through rationalism. They learn morality through literal like experience. That's how people develop moral systems. Just metaethically speaking.
No. I mean, I think that's true, right? And I think that like,
so I can't rationally like give them like I can't obviously to a certain age they can, right? We're talking about like really low ages, right? Like maybe 6 you can get it for some. The age is more like 7-ish. But even like older, like even because if you take like at least this is in my area, like the average 12-year-old, like is not gonna understand rational systems related to morals or in essence like that. They're not gonna understand that much of detail into like deontology or like utilitarianism. Right? It's just like because it requires a lot of basic knowledge that's just not the level. I mean, 12 years old, like what are you like? You're in middle school, right? Like you're just like that's like 6th grade or something. I mean, this is like like middle school. A lot of kids barely even know basic like math. Like a lot of like I think you're being more charitable to these kids. Like they're smart. Like a lot of kids in America at that age are like really fucking retarded in respect to these concepts.
I would say illiterate, but not like disabled.
Well, I don't literally mean the psychological description of retarded, right? I'm not talking about like they lack some cognitive capacity. I'm just saying relatively to the concepts that like we're talking about, they're it's like functionally they're incapable of understanding it if they don't have this basic set of information, like which takes time for them to know because you have to explain each concept. It's not like these things don't work through osmosis, they don't just flood the brain just looking at a page. Like these requires
right. They have to read, right?
Yeah,
like that's what the literature is for. Like a lot of the stuff that you're referring to gets covered in the different books from like different philosophers and prominent figures of whatever topic of research that you want to go down. Like a lot of what you're saying is just covered in literally reading. And I think a lot of it has to deal with, do these kids care enough to read all these different books in order to try to understand this thing? And bottom line is, no, they don't. They almost definitely don't. But I don't think that's them being like incapable. I think they are capable of reading that much and engaging in that high level conversation as they read to get more understanding of the topic. I just think they don't care enough.
Well, I think that's a separate issue, right? I mean, we're assuming that they actually care to know these things, right? Well, I mean, because you can apply that not caring shit to anything, any field of knowledge. But I'm just saying specifically, like if you just rank, like I mean, I feel like this is just self-evident, right? If you just rank the like fields of knowledge, right? I mean, it's gonna just intuitively be easier to understand, like basic social studies, right? Because all you do is just knowing facts than like understanding like some advanced level math, like calculus or something, for like a 7-year-old. Like it's just easier to know these things. Even just talking, regardless of the desire to know them, just ranking them intuitively, like it's just harder.
Yeah, but I'm not talking about the ontology of the subjects themselves. I'm not
talking
about
the ontology either. I'm talking specifically about how hard the difficulty is, right? The difficulty of the subject. That's all. That's what I'm referring to. I'm not talking about the nature of the knowledge or the existence
I
of the
mean,
knowledge or anything like that.
are you referring to like the complexity?
Yeah, the difficulty. Yeah.
I mean, but that's that's my thing though. I don't think a complex thing necessarily is a complicated thing. So when you're saying something's difficult, I'm thinking that you're referring to complicated as in it's a complicated thing to understand. Whereas I think a complex thing, right, is something that has a lot of levels and a lot of things to it. So for example, driving.
I'm not speaking about something being complicated. I mean the word complex. It's complex knowledge. And in order for you to understand something that's complex, you have to understand its simple aspects to it. Like, I don't know why you're pushing back on this point. I feel like this is like self-evident.
No, but if you're talking about complex knowledge, right, and you're talking about getting basic understanding of knowledge, right, that would literally boil down to what is its most simple terms. And I think it is going to be able to understand it.
No, but here's the thing, though. That's like by definition, something that's complex can't necessarily be broken down to just simple terms without you losing information about it. That's the whole point of it being complex.
Well, of course, but we're not talking about like we're not talking about like hooking us up to like a cord in the back of our head and just like being the Matrix and like battling kung fu. Like it's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about like the younger, like the more we understand things generally and the better understanding we have of these things, generally speaking, the younger we will start like teaching our kids, like just the introducing them to these concepts because they'll be able to understand them at their simplest terms. Now the literacy and the reading and like getting to all the just other stuff, of course it's going to take more time. It's going to be like more tedious to get that firm understanding of it.
It's not even tedious though. When
reading?
You admit it. No. You admitted though that a complex subject by definition can't be made simple unless you're losing information in respect to that subject, right? You admitted that.
But so you're going to need to give me an example of what you mean.
Example what I mean? Okay. Number theory, right? Or like differential equations. Okay. Calculus. Those are complex subjects, right? Relatively to like a 7-year-old, right? You can't understand that at all, actually, without a foundation in algebra, right? You agree, right? Can you understand calculus without a foundation in algebra?
No, you can't.
All right. So there's an example of how certain advanced things just simply can't be come across unless you understand the simple aspects that underlies them, right? So now to algebra, right? Now explaining to a 7-year-old algebra, right, might be, it might be doable for some, but if you're talking about the average kid in America, a 7-year-old is not going to be able to understand algebra.
I'm not talking about that at all, dude.
Then what are we talking about?
I'm saying that like there is a time. I'm saying that if we continue pushing us trying to like increase the level of intellect within our youth, that there probably will be a time where you can explain like calculus to the average 7-year-old.
Yeah, I know you said like you feel like there's gonna be a time. I'm just saying like, I mean that's like it's fine to have that like face claim. I'm just saying like the evidence of just the Piaget development seems that it holds that like at certain ages you just won't understand certain concepts, regardless of the Flynn effect.
I mean, I'm at a loss because I'm not sure what you're disagreeing with me.
I'm just like, well, okay, you know what the Flynn effect is, right?
No, I don't.
Okay, so the Flynn effect is basically that IQ has increased globally over time. So it's basically what you were hinting to. Like if IQ just increases, we'll maybe explain stuff at like a smaller age. Well, I'm saying that the Flynn effect has taken effect, and Piaget's development has relatively stayed the same. So that means that it doesn't seem to correlate. And if you say that it does correlate, then like you need to present me some new evidence. Other than that, I don't. That's really it.
Are you talking about IQ raising?
Yeah.
Is that what you just said? Yeah, but that's not. I'm not talking about how intelligent someone.
Well, wait.
I'm actually not referring to intelligence at all.
Wait. Okay. How do you understand abstract concepts if you lack IQ? With a certain IQ prerequisite.
I think so. There's differences. Like I think when people are talking about IQ, I just think that's like a quasi outdated and like really strange way to talk about just
wait.
intelligence and
IQ
intellect.
is outdated. No reputable psychologist would ever say IQ is outdated. I don't know what you're referring to.
I mean,
IQ is one of the most like tested things in human psychology.
It's more like the way that people typically, from my understanding, typically go about trying to like describe how smart someone will be is and test that is not like so I can literally link you just like in the difference between intellect and intelligence, because like I'm referring specifically to intellect, and that's the thing that
Okay, so IQ. Okay, do you agree that IQ is just the ability to like have a certain level of conceptualization or like abstraction, right? Someone with an 80 IQ cannot know the same abstraction as like someone who's like a 140. Like that is
but
just
like
fundamentally true.
here's the thing, right? Like under the guise of IQ, I accept what you're saying. I'm not 100% sure what anybody actually means when they say IQ. It's kind of like the sapiens thing, where we mean, if we call ourselves a Homo sapien, we're saying that we're wise, but like we're not really being clear and specific on what we mean by wise. There is no like real definition for this. We're just like saying it. I think it's like too broad. Which is why like I'm doing particularly like the Greeks, because they're like kind of they try to play themselves off as smarter than what they really are. But intellect is a very particular type of state where people are able to process and understand concepts. And it's not necessarily about like how intelligent you are or how much knowledge you have. It literally is about how
Wait, I wasn't even referring to the amount of knowledge you have or how many or if you're like particularly good in a certain area. IQ is a general term for describing just the conceptual nature or the level of understanding, how quick you understand something, how complex you understand something. That's what IQ refers to, and those are exactly correlated with certain subjects like mathematics, high levels of philosophy. This is why people who have high IQs usually do better in those fields than people with low IQs. How often, like, would you find, like, I feel like this is just, like, intuitively true. Like, are you going to find a person with an 80 IQ in a high-level math class? Like, you just won't find one.
I mean,
like honestly,
I could.
there's no 80 IQ person. Okay, like, that is mental retardation, right? Just complete mental retardation. You're not going to find that in a high-level math class.
That's.
You disagree with that statement?
No, it's more like I'm trying to give you like one, maybe like 4 different articles that I can literally pull up right now that debunk this entire concept.
No. What you're referring to is something else, right? You can have different, like, you can be smart in a certain area, right? I'm not referring to that. I'm referring to just the ability to conceptualize things, which is like or the ability to understand.
That's intellect. Things. That's intellect, dude.
No, it's not.
Then what do you mean by intellect?
I'm not even talking about intellect. I'm talking about IQ.
Well, no, but like you're talking about IQ, right? Or you use the name IQ, but then you're talking about like the way in which someone like understands things. Can they conceptualize things, being abstract, right? So you're really referring to sapiens. And my thing is, like, we cover this in intellect.
No, dude. Okay. The general IQ generally is understood as the ability to understand certain things and how fast or how good you are at understanding them, right? And that's just. Do you disagree with that statement?
I mean, it's not that I don't disagree with what you're saying,
All
but
right.
I think that when you just use the term IQ, it gets really broad. So like for me, right? I get what you're saying now when you say IQ, but that's not something that I knew from jump, because when people use the word IQ, a lot of times they will like mean something else than what is generally recognized. And for me, just personally, I legitimately do not know what people mean other than someone being smart. Like I just don't typically. They use the word IQ and just mean how smart someone is. And it's like, well, what do you mean by smart? And like they can't give an answer. So in the under the definition that you are presenting, right? I get what you're saying, but I think you're also referring to sapience and, and intellect. I think both of these
No,
things
no, no,
are
no.
what we're
So
talking about.
what you just linked me is exactly what IQ describes. Like these are like this right here is what exactly
Yes,
what.
exactly.
Yeah.
That's intellect. That's intellect, dude.
No, no,
That's what I'm
no. But
saying.
no person refers to intellect in an academic sense. Like you're just using the word that you just like, right? I mean, IQ and intellect describe the same thing. You're just choosing to pick one word and not the other. Okay, knowledge, right? And total knowledge is not even IQ. Like everyone understands that. You're just like I mean, if you, I don't. It doesn't matter if you don't like the word IQ. Like these are the same thing. So like there shouldn't be any disagreement here.
No, I'm saying that sure, I'll adopt your term. I'm saying the
Okay.
higher the kid's IQ goes, the more they're going to be able to understand these
Yeah, but
more
then
complicated
like I
forms.
said, it goes back to the Piaget development, right? It's like the ability to understand logic and abstract reasoning stays at a stagnant age. Doesn't change
Uh,
variable to
I
the
can't give you documentation. I could try to look that up and maybe get back to you later. I can't give you documentation right now off of my anecdotes. That's not the case. Just
That's
off
not
of
the
pure
case.
anecdotes.
So do you want
Off
me to
of
just link
anecdotes.
you Piaget's cognitive development?
Sure, go ahead. I'm telling you from my personal experience what you're talking about right now and how to correlate. Like it's just not true. Just and I'm a pretty weird dude. I've drifted throughout like the
I mean,
world. So
your anecdotes like don't combat statistical population data, right?
I right, but I'm
Right.
only gonna go off of what I believe. So like you're not gonna convince me off of your documentation, even it because I have my own anecdotal evidence that I can refer to. I may not be able to convince you, right? But like you're not gonna convince me either.
I mean, I don't really care about convincing, right? I mean, just the fundamental thing is true, right? I mean, I'm not going to say that if you present me with a medication that'll cure my like blood, like my fucking weird cardiovascular like condition, and then someone tells me, well, I didn't take the medication, and like I went to like church and like God put like some shit in me that made me feel good. I mean, that would be I would just look at them like that's just a really weird hierarchy of evidence there. Like it's just like you don't. I mean, you can do that. I mean, I don't really care. I'm just saying. I think you're fundamentally misunderstanding your anecdotes because it just doesn't make any sense unless you're appealing to some fringe case of like an Asperger's kid who just has logic and reasoning at a super younger age. Fundamentally,
Well, I mean, if you're talking about like, I mean, to be clear, I'm a really like anti-religious person. I can get into the theology, but like even beyond that, when we're talking about these particular things of feelings and sensations that people experience within their own subjective reality, right? I would go as far as to say that the intangible may exist, right? Like energy may be a thing, it may be intangible, and it may be outside of the realm of physical. Like that may be true. Whether it's probably true or not, I don't know. But like the things that, like in the example that you just gave, that might lead credence to the idea that the intangible is real, that the metaphysical is not just a thought or just an idea, that these are like universal constants within our reality, and we may want to look more deeper into that.
So, Cross, go to the article I just linked you, and you're gonna get to a point. You're gonna get to a part where it says, "Hold on, let me see real quick." It's going to say formal operational stage, which is the last stage in Piaget's cognitive stage of development, okay? And it'll tell you exactly the baseline from when people really start understanding abstract reasoning and thought. It's in the article right there.
No, I'm trying to refresh it so that I can see it, because I'm not seeing it right now. It's like a blank page for me. Like, okay. When was this article published?
Oh, bro, this is like established like psychology. It's Piaget. The article isn't Piaget himself. Piaget already died. Is it just already foundational knowledge in child development, bro? It doesn't matter about when the article is published. Like, come on. Like,
no, dude. Like, you really mean to tell me that like prominent figures within topics of research don't end up like being proven wrong years down the line?
All right, but you haven't presented any evidence that shows that he's wrong. Nobody.
But I'm not trying to. But I just said, right, that like I'm not going to be able to convince you, but you're also not going to convince me. That's what I said.
But that would just be you just being like retarded then, because like that's like me.
But why? Wait,
why
no,
is it
dude,
retarded?
No,
why,
dude.
Why is
All
it retarded?
I'm saying.
Because,
okay, wait. No. Hold on. I need to clarify, right? So, like, just to be clear, right? If I tell you that I lived in a neighborhood where a cop came into my block, opened up a trunk, and passed around M4s and M16s, repeating carbines and AK-47s to every single dude, like on every corner, right? If I tell you that I saw this happen, and you say statistically this doesn't happen, there's no evidence for this, right? You're never going to convince me that I just hallucinated what I saw and what I lived through. You're just not.
PJ has been replicated by psychologists all over the world. That's how science works. It's validation by correspondence. So I don't I don't understand the point here. Like this is like rejecting evolution on the grounds that you haven't seen a certain species evolve into another species yet. Like this is just like the simple, like this is like basic 101 really bad theistic argument. So like you don't have to accept empirical established evidence for sure. I'm not going to force you to do that. But I'm just saying, like, in the context of who is right and wrong here, like I'm by the consensus of modern science, like I'm pretty right on
this. I believe you when you say that, dude. That doesn't convince me, but I believe you when you say that.
I'm not trying to convince you because you're just not.
But I'm not trying. But I also said I'm not trying to prove you wrong. Wait, dude. I'm not trying to prove you wrong. I'm trying to tell you where I'm coming from. There's a whole difference. There's a difference between that.
Okay, I understand that you're trying to tell me where you come from, right? But I'm trying to like let you know, right? Just through like this is not even like a formalized debate. I'm just like trying to let you know, like you're just not understanding the topic fundamentally, right? And I'm trying to give you like the actual data here, or like the actual empirical stuff. And you're just refusing to reject it. I'm sorry, you're refusing to accept it on virtue of your emotion. Like you're just like, oh, I just don't care because my anecdotes are more true than the work of scientists all over the world to validate a theory.
No, dude. It literally goes back into, unless you're trying to say that the example that I gave was a false equivalency, like it literally goes back to the same thing. If I've lived through something and I see that like this is true, and you give me like surveys and like hundreds of years of research that tells me that the thing that I know to be true because I lived through it is wrong, I'm going to tell you, like, I don't believe you because I've lived through it. I'm just being real.
Okay, but then that's just like really like, I mean, it's just like bad critical thinking skills. Like,
So I just
that's
hallucinated what I lived through? Really, dude?
no one says you hallucinate what you live through. If you tell me, I mean, okay, this is like literally what you're saying, right? So okay, I'm someone who has a Lamarck's theory of evolution, which is that, for example, when you use your limbs, that's how they grow or something like that. That's like Lamarck's thing, right? And then you're a Darwinian and you say, well, no, evolution works through that natural
Survival of the
selection of certain
fittest.
genes, blah blah, right? Everyone in modern biology has accepted Darwinian's theory of evolution, like this de facto, right? Like that's just the facts, right? If I say to you that I swear to God, I saw a giraffe reaching for a tree every day, and finally he reached it, like you would tell me that, okay, you are definitely justified in believing that and rejecting the work of literally hundreds of thousands of scientists over the span of a century. Like this is like akin to what you're doing with this right now. And obviously anyone will look at you and be like, what is wrong with you? Like why?
But right now, what you're describing, the opposition that you're right now is akin to all scientists and physicists in regards to Einstein. Because when Einstein came out, the shit that he was saying was everyone was just like, no, you're wrong. It makes no sense. And then like
that's not true.
Down the line,
whoa, that's not true. That is not
totally
true.
Totally is.
Wait. When Einstein, first of all, give me the exact theory that Einstein made that everyone said was bullshit.
Okay, let me look this up. I'm pretty sure. Like if I'm talking about ass, I will like say I'm talking about ass.
Bro, but you know that you're talking out your ass, low key. Like come on, that isn't, you are talking out your ass a little bit.
I'm trying
to
see.
Bro.
I'm trying to
did you
see.
actually know this, like when you said it, or you just like, let me see if I can finesse some shit? Like, be honest.
No, I'm being honest with you. I could have sworn I heard this before. Like I could have sworn I knew this and like this was a thing. Like not just the fact that he was a patent clerk, but also that like he was heavily opposed in his time.
No, bro. Everyone was right. He won the Nobel Prize during his time. What you mean? he won the Nobel Prize, bro. Like he didn't get rejected by any of his people.
He kept proving that he was right. He had to keep proving it, if I remember correctly.
No, bro. We didn't have to keep proving it, bro. The only thing that, and this was even people rejecting Einstein. Einstein rejected quantum mechanics because he thought it was just a really bad theory. But no one rejected Einstein's accounts and said he's wrong and he had to prove himself. He wasn't like Galileo trying to prove to the church that of the heliocentric theory. Like there's no, bro. Like that.
My God, come on,
bro. Come on, bro. you know that was some bullshit.
Yo, I'm okay. Hoopa theory. Because now they're talking about like positions he accepted, and it's like, nah. Trying to include acceleration theory. I mean, what the fuck?
All right, bro. I gotta bounce though. So you got that thing pulled up?
Nah, I gotta do criticism of the theory of relativity. I see criticisms. I do see criticisms by people like Tesla and like other shit, but I mean,
what criticisms did Tesla give of relativity? And is Tesla the representation of the embodiment of physicists. Tesla wasn't even a physicist, so it's like
okay. I mean, I can just tell you about criticism right now. Like,
but yeah, people can criticize relativity, but that doesn't mean that's a consensus among physicists. You said, right? Your claim was that Einstein had to keep proving himself because people were resisting him, and you said as like a majority of
because they were
what?
Like it was mainly expressed in his early years, and like
you
saw.
Bro, listen. Give me something in the specific theory that they opposed. I'm not gonna hear a story out the ass, bro. I want to hear something specific, bro.
I'm trying. I just gave you an article. This isn't something that I fucking did.
You gave me the wiki criticism of theory relativity. You're not giving me an article on this. You just gave me someone. You just gave me some criticism of the idea.
What's wrong with wiki though? Nothing's
wrong with wiki.
Okay, so that article, that wiki that I just linked you is fucking describes everything I'm talking about.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean that in his day he was being pushed on by the majority of physicists that his ideas were wrong. You're just giving me criticism of the theory.
No, it says that really early on in this publication, so during his day, in his time, when he first came out with the shit that he was talking about, people were like really criticizing on it.
Wait. Okay, obviously, of anything, when you first release it and people start reading it, they're gonna have criticisms of it. Like, that's just obvious. That doesn't mean that the majority of people who read it had criticisms against it, right? Those are two different things.
I mean,
yeah, like, what you mean? Like, yeah.
Look, I don't know if it's like, I don't know if there's like a fucking ranking on prominent figures and just like the college kids who are reading his shit and who had criticisms on it, right? Like, I don't know if that's there, but I do know that people were like criticizing it because he was going against the norm. And that's really the concept that I'm referring to right now.
How did Einstein go against the norm?
Right now, dude, the thing that you were saying, it just sounds like a massive appeal to a popularity at the moment.
Wait, how am I appealing to popularity?
Well, more of kind of like a mix between popularity and authority. So you're using Piaget as I'm explaining. You're using Piaget as an authority, right? Like, kind of like saying he's the dude who talks about just human psychology.
I'm not using Piaget as authority. I'm using his work as the fundamental accepted scientific knowledge. Like, do you think an appeal to authority is establishing that majority of scientists have agreed on something? Because if that's appeal to authority, then all knowledge is appeal to authority.
No. Wait. So, but if that's the case, right? Like, if that's the case, if it's not an authority thing, then it almost directly has to be a popularity thing.
No, it's not. The popularity
the populace have agreed to something. They've come to a consensus.
Okay.
So it is a popular thing to understand that.
Simple question. Where do you think knowledge, how knowledge is accepted? How do you think that process goes? The scientific method embedded is the confirmation of most scientists in the field agreeing with the claim. So every knowledge that you have on any scientific basis or historical basis or social scientific basis all come from the agreement of the people in the field. That's just unavoidable. If that's your argument, right? Then literally all knowledge is just wrong or an appeal to popularity, which you think is wrong.
I'm not saying that all knowledge is wrong. I'm just saying
it leads to you saying all knowledge is wrong.
No, what I'm saying is that I'm not necessarily wrong, and that you're not necessarily right.
No, you are
there
wrong.
Is always that question.
Okay.
You can say that I'm probably wrong, right?
No,
you can say I'm probably wrong, and you can say that you believe that I'm wrong, but like it doesn't mean I'm necessarily wrong.
No. Within the field of psychology, you are objectively wrong here.
From a bunch of other people throughout their own intersubjectivity, they come to that conclusion, so that makes it objective.
All knowledge is formed through subjective agreements on a single idea.
So then I'm not objectively wrong. Y'all just disagree with me.
Oh my god. Listen. You can okay. I'm not okay. When I say something's objectively wrong in the realm, I'm saying that within the context of that thing, right? Within the context of mathematics, which is a subjective thing, within it, you can make objective statements. For example, 1 + 1 = 2. Within the realm of mathematics is objective. Mathematics, however, exists subjectively.
I mean, I'd kind of say that math is math outside of it. Like, and I actually go as far as to
This
say
is
that
not
math
a
is
conversation.
a tool.
I don't want to go to the conversation.
Math is more like a tool. I don't think it's really subjective. I think we use
There
it
you go. If
subjectively,
math is
right?
a
But I don't
tool,
think
then it
math
is
itself.
subjective. That means it's
Wait, no, I think no,
ontologically. Ontologically, bro. It's if it's mind dependent or mind
but
independent.
the ontology of it is objective, though. The ontology of it is objective,
The
like
ontology.
that.
Okay. Do you know? Okay, you understand what you mean by you saying that math is ontologically objective? You're saying that outside of the mind, that if we removed all subjective experience, all life, that math would still exist in the universe out there. You
The
agree with that?
concept of math, honestly, yeah.
All right. That and you believe in like the Platonic realm or some shit? You believe like mathematical concepts, like numbers exist, like the sun, like there's a two dancing in the universe or something?
No, it's not like
All right.
that. That's not how I mean it.
Then how do you? Okay, I really don't want to get into conversation about mathematical realism. All I'm saying is that Piaget is cognitive development. Okay, that's what it is. You don't have to take it or leave it. You know what I'm saying? Like it's all cool, bro. But good talk though. All right, bro.
All right, you're good. Don't worry about it. All love.
All right, bro. Take care.
All right.
Thank you for listening. Like, share, subscribe, and join us in the Nameless Debates Discord. We hope to see you there.